Hello and welcome to the Inside Ellen Road podcast with me, Joe Donoghue, and YEP chief football writer Graham Smith. Signing number 3 is through the door. Sebastian Bornau joins Daniel Farke's team of giants, and it definitely feels like there are more to come. We'll dig a bit deeper into the transfer strategy on this week's episode because it's quickly becoming very clear that what we suspected to be the case is in fact accurate. And that is that Leeds United are attempting to assemble a team which resembles where the Wild Things are. Would you say that that's accurate, Graham?
If you're tall enough, you're good enough. That's not quite the mantra. We can come on to talk about that and how Farke is still demanding certain technical spec with his signings, but they are great big lads United, and 3 through the door already as we record on the 2nd of July. It's not a slow start, and yes, there's lots and lots to do. But I think they're quite pleased with themselves.
Yeah, I think they should be as well. I mean, it shows that the work has been in place for some time to be able to strike pretty early in the window. I mean, I know that we had that week or 6-day window at the beginning for the Club World Cup teams, but apart from that, the window's been open pretty much 2 weeks, and they've added 3 players. They've strengthened in what will be a key position next season at centre half. With 2, domineering, towering central defenders who, if not starters, I think Biop definitely will be a starter. Then certainly they've added depth and options. And yeah, I mean, it seems like there's definitely going to be more to come. Again, you've added depth to the striker position. We've discussed how that probably means, writing on the wall territory for sort of someone like Bamford or someone like Matteo Joseph. But again, it's very much moving in the right direction. You've got to evolve the squad. Gone are the days where you could come up into the Premier League and, do what you did in the Championship the year before. The competition is just too stark now. So, yeah, I think they can be pleased with themselves. But again, there's no resting on laurels, and that's certainly not the indication that we've been getting. They are still interested in players and still trying to get them through the door, which means, Anton Stach. Should we begin with him? Because he's one that we definitely know they like. Another giant midfielder. What's the lowdown on him, Graham?
They like him. And what's not to like? If you didn't like him, you wouldn't tell him, would you? He's 6'4". He wins the ball a lot. 60% of the time, he wins the ball every time, Joe. He is a specialist when it comes to regaining possession, but I think he's got a bit about him as well when it comes to progressing the ball and actually dealing with it. And at 6'4", he barely has to jump to win a header. So he's ticking lots of boxes. He's a player that they like, but whereas some of the other deals, some of their business has kind of come to light, come to the public senses quite late on in the day. The Stach one, it feels like it's come to light a little bit earlier in the day. So they're expecting a bit more of a longer, more drawn out affair with this one. You can see why they would want to go for him. You could also see why other teams would be looking at a player like this. You'd also anticipate that this is a player that they could probably get for less than the 300 million Sunderland spent on Habib Diarra. But again, fits the profile. You have to be 26 to play for this team, and you have to be tall. And those are the parameters within which each and every signing, it seems, is falling. I like the look of them, though. I don't want to say I've fallen in love already, but the idea of having a big, strong centre midfielder barreling through in the way that we previously mentioned Decore used to do against Leeds, that's an attractive proposition. As much as we want to see, really skillful, technical players, he fits the bill.
So returning to a player that has actually signed for Leeds United, it was confirmed yesterday evening that Sebastian Bornau had signed for Leeds. Do you remember a couple of years ago when Leeds were interested in Charles de Ketelaere and the term Euro Bamford was going around? Now, I don't know if anyone else is getting this impression, but does Bornau look a little bit like Patrick Bamford to you?
No, he looks like a Euro Jamie Vardy to me.
Really?
He looks like if Jamie Vardy had chosen to go interrailing at the age of 17 instead of to Magaluf. That this is, I think, what we might have ended up with.
I can't not see him as just being a long-haired version of Bamford. Maybe
He plays the piano.
He plays piano.
Plays piano very well, according to a source.
Are we sure we haven't just got Bamford in a wig?
They've already brought in a big striker, have they?
Yeah, Bamford's seen Leeds sign Lucas Nemecha and gone, you know what, I need to diversify here. I need to come up with a disguise. He's accidentally typed in his changing his name on deed poll to Sebastian. He's accidentally typed a second A at the end of it as well, which I'm sure will catch a lot of people out. But yeah, no, that was just something that when I first saw a picture of Bornau, I was like, Patrick, is that you? Yeah, no. I mean, in terms of what he's like as a player, I have not seen a great deal of him. I know he spent a bit of time injured last year, but what it does appear he's very good at is winning the ball in the air. He seems to be one of the best in Europe at contesting and winning aerial duels. Which again, if you're defending your box from big centre forwards in the Premier League, it's probably a good idea to have a defender that can go toe to toe or forehead to forehead with them. What else have you sort of, apart from his musical talents, what else have you learnt about Leeds' newest signing?
He has a lucky pair of pants, or a lucky colour of pants. And also, there have been times in his career when he's hit a bit of a goal-scoring streak. Not so much the last couple of seasons, but set pieces, I think. He can be a bit of an asset attacking set pieces. Started life as a striker, as a lot of players do. You know, they start as a striker and then they realise they're not quite as technical as the other strikers and they move back into midfield, and then they realise they're not quite as technical as the other midfielders and they move back to centre back, and that's where they find their home. That happens to a lot of players.
So sorry,
you're
saying that the guy who looks like Bamford, who has a different hairstyle to Bamford, used to play as a striker. I'm just joining the dots here. I'm joining the dots.
Yeah. So we know that Farke liked him previously because Norwich went for him in 2021. Back when it looked like his team might get relegated and that might free him up at a less than market value price. But actually, I think he might have even... Did he score in that game that kept Cologne up? I can't remember, but he played a part in them staying up, and it meant that the price remained market value or just over. So Wolfsburg ended up buying him for 11 million, something like that. But the way it's working at Leeds, you know, names are coming from scouts, names are coming from data, names will also come from the coaching staff, and then they all kind of take a look and then they make a decision. And it's not just a case of, Daniel, who have you really wanted to get over the past few years and not managed to get? Shall we go and get them? If anyone was worried about that. And it's also not a case of just bringing in galoots. You know, it's not just let's be really, really big and strong. I've written about physicality for this week's newsletter and how Farke's type seems to have changed. It certainly has. The profile has changed from last summer when there were others at Leeds who were saying we need physicality, and he was saying we need technical superiority, and the latter is what they went with. You know, they got small, nippy, technical, more skilled players. This summer, so far, the profile has changed, but there is still a technical requirement from Farke that players coming in have to be able to meet. You know, they still have to be, maybe not, he maybe wouldn't describe some of them as ballers in the way that he described Tanaka and Rothwell last season. They're not pure ballers, perhaps, but they have to still have a bit about them. You know, you can't go into the Premier League just with a team of rugby players. They have to still be able to deal with the ball at some stage on the deck.
Yeah, I think there's a decent amount of a decent split in the squad at the moment. because as you mentioned, last year they did prioritize technicality or technical ability, and this year so far they've certainly prioritized physicality and intensity, and I think that's absolutely the right way to go. Last year, because you need to, you're going to be a team that's going to have a lot of the ball, so you're going to need some really technical, good operators on it. This coming season, and probably you'd imagine the next 2 seasons if you stay up, you're not going to have as much of the ball. So, what you need instead is physicality, people who can deal with the opposition in duels and that sort of thing. And yeah, I was saying to you yesterday, if it doesn't work and Leeds do end up getting relegated, I don't think you can level too much of a criticism at sort of the recruitment strategy, because it's very clear that they're trying something different. It's not the strategy that Southampton had last year when they were pretty much relegated by Christmas. It's not the strategy Leicester had. It's certainly not the strategy that Ipswich had, in terms of essentially buying the best that the Championship and League One had to offer and hoping that was going to be the case. People might look at it as a situation of, oh well, Leeds are just buying the biggest and most physical players from the Bundesliga. I wouldn't say it's necessarily that, because obviously there are other targets that have been discussed and we're aware of who aren't in the Bundesliga, and in an ideal world, Leeds would sign before the end of the window. Should we talk a little bit more about that then? Because you just put a tweet out before we started recording about the latest on Gabriel Gudmundsson, the Swedish fullback, Swedish wingback, if we're going to be perfectly honest. He's got bags of attacking intent. He's beneath 6 foot, would you believe it? A pygmy. Which is pretty rich coming from this podcast. And as well as Max Wober and the goalkeeper Lucas Perry. So what's the latest on that G-Dog? I had to get one in.
Gudmundsson looks like a great little guy, doesn't he? Just a great wee man. He a very attacking player, very attacking fullback, and one that kind of makes you think Farke has not abandoned, what he actually believes is the way to play football. Because Gudmundsson is very much delivering the ball into the penalty area, getting forward and attacking player. The latest is that there is no latest beyond what we reported yesterday, which is that Leeds have made slight progress with that one, which I think tells you that he is very, very high up on their wanted list for left back. But they haven't got a deal done yet. So we're not anticipating anything imminently. I don't believe he's on a flight as we speak to LBA. And I know that the skies are being watched intently. He feels like one that there's the potential there to see a kind of Premier League player. But again, as with all of these, the jury's very much out. And like you said, you can see a plan starting to develop with the players that they're targeting and the players that they've signed already. Even with Habib Diarra, you could see what they wanted there, which was a player who could carry the ball quickly and powerfully when they won it in transition to try and get them up the pitch very, very quickly. Because counter-attack might be a very important tool for Leeds United, perhaps even more important than it was last season. Didn't get Diarra, and I think, out of the two, Stack or Diarra, would you say very, very different, or you would choose one or the other?
I'd say they're definitely different. I wouldn't say they're very, very different. I think Stack is a slightly different profile, maybe slightly more destructive, destroyer type than Diarra. But I guess
5 inches taller as well.
But yeah, that does help. I also think that one of Diarra's strong points is that we've discussed this on the pod, where I wrote something about it, is his jump in ability. He pounces on opposition moves and reads the game quite well. Stack's got 5 inches on him. He's what he's old. He is. He's older. He's by about
He's 5 years
5 years as
older.
well. So yeah, I mean, he's naturally going to have longer limbs. He'd look pretty weird if he had the same limbs length as someone who was 5'11". Yeah, I think they're slightly different. I wouldn't put a direct comparison, but to be honest, missing out on Diarra at £30 million at that price point, I'm not too cut up about that. I think, if I'm being perfectly honest, when the initial bid that Leeds lodged was reported, the 22 million, I did think it's a bit high for a player of his experience. And you look at how many players come from Ligue 1 at £30 million and are immediate successes? I just, yeah, it's not one which I thought, okay, he's amazing, you absolutely have to go and get him. And fair play to Leeds for clearly they'll have spoken in negotiations with Strasbourg and decided that actually, you know what, we're not going to go to 30 million. Someone else might, and someone else might value them for their team higher than the need that there is in the Leeds squad. But yeah, I think in keeping their powder dry on that one, I think they've probably made the right decision. I mean, I'll probably be made to eat my words when he's PFA Young Player of the Year next season, but
worth 55 million next summer.
Yeah, doubles his value.
I think if you have been struggling to sleep at night over this deal, then simply content yourself with what L'Equipe told us about him, which was pretty average last season, underwhelming, struggled in big games. Definitely a player of huge potential, I would say, and he's one of those that you could see him have a bit of a breakout season in the Premier League, and all of a sudden, he's at Brighton, and then after that Chelsea. You could plot his next 4 years if you like, but there is something to be said for not getting drawn into kind of, I don't want to say a battle of ego, because it wasn't ego that made Sunderland value at 30 million. That was simply what Strasbourg wanted, or what Strasbourg could get from Sunderland, because Sunderland value him that importantly. They're replacing Joe Bellingham. They've got some money to burn, and they've gone in this direction. But Leeds didn't get drawn into thinking we need to beat Sunderland to this player, and we'll see whether that was wise or not. It'll depend on who Leeds get and how good they are, and if they're what Leeds need, and if Diarra turns out to be what Sunderland need. I mean, both clubs can come out of this claiming they were right, claiming some sort of victory, but it'll just depend on what Leeds do. Elsewhere in the squad, we haven't really talked about goalkeeper much yet this summer, because we've kind of been focusing on the defenders that have been coming in, and Nemecha came in, and they're trying to get Stack, trying to get Goodmanson. There has been a lot of excitement about a flight from Lyon that Leeds say has absolutely nothing to do with them. And the reason for the excitement is that people were thinking this is Lucas Perry on his way, Brazilian shot stopper from Lyon. Lyon, of course, are in one of the big talking points, one of the big stories this summer, because of their financial relegation and their subsequent appeal, and the ramifications for Europe and all of that, but also the ramifications transfer-wise of players who, if that appeal is unsuccessful, will be thinking, right, get me on the first flight out of here, s'il vous plaît, because they won't want to play second tier in France, which is perhaps understandable from a career point of view. Perry might well be one of those, but it's not one that is so imminent that we're expecting a deal just yet, because he's one of a number of names they like. And it doesn't feel like, sometimes it feels like a bit of a smokescreen, a bit of a, let's protect our interest in this player and let's not let people know that he's our number one target, because that might draw others in, or it might not be a great look if we don't get him. It feels to me like there's a bit more of a conversation still going on at Leeds about who it is that they really want to get between the sticks. We know that there's various departments involved in decisions, and they all have to come to an agreement, and they all have to say yes before they pull the trigger on a deal. It still feels a little bit like they're at the discussion and exploratory stage. Doesn't mean that something couldn't happen. You know, they could decide tomorrow, this is the one we want, let's go for it, and then the wheels will be in motion. But you know, deals can take a while, as we've seen, and the feeling, at least right now, is that there's nothing imminent on Perry. I can't say that I would be able to give him a personal recommendation, having not watched a great deal of Ligue 1 last season. I watched some highlights of games, but I haven't watched very many full games. And my interest was mostly in what Chucky Creswell was up to. But have you had sight of him? I mean, he's Brazilian, so instant excitement.
Well, I think there was also some excitement about Leeds signing a Real Madrid goalkeeper about 6 or 7 years ago. It turned out to be Kiko Casilla. So just because he's Brazilian, I wouldn't necessarily say that
Kiko Casilla wasn't Brazilian.
Excitement. Sorry?
Kiko Casilla wasn't Brazilian.
Yeah, I know, but the draw was, this is a Real Madrid goalkeeper signing for Leeds.
Ah, I see.
Like, this is a Brazilian goalkeeper who Leeds, like, or certain members of the recruitment structure like. Yeah, to be honest, not seen a great deal of him. Sorry, everyone.
But this is your thing, Joe.
I know. What I would say is, would you have any interest in bringing back a certain French striker so that if Leeds did end up signing Perry, you could have, I don't know, let's say Jean-Kevin and Perry, as sort of a double a double announcement. Yeah. Not sure that's the best use of the budget, considering what Jean-Kevin has done since leaving Elland Road and whilst he was at Elland Road. But yeah, no, I've not seen a great deal of him. I need to look into the data behind it first to see if he'd be a good signing. Because I think it's difficult to assess goalkeepers from a scouting perspective. It's quite difficult to assess them when you're not an expert on that. That's why when I look at goalkeepers, I lean quite heavily on the data side, because I'm not a goalkeeper myself. I'm not looking at foot positioning when they're going to save shots and how confident they are at claiming high balls and stuff like that. Whereas certainly the latter of those two, you are able to check that in the numbers. So yeah, I'd have to double check. But yeah, the Lyon situation is a really complex one. And I know that as soon as the news came out, there were a lot of people going, right, who can Leeds sign from this team? And yes, while that is very likely to be the case, that there will be not quite a fire sale, because Lyon did that earlier in the window with selling Cherki before the accounting deadline. Obviously, didn't prove to be enough. But I think whilst there is an appeal ongoing, I still find it difficult to see them playing in Ligue 2 next season, because they are appealing, and whilst the appeal is ongoing, you can't really demote them, can you? And also the European side of things. I know that Nottingham Forest are trying to buy Malik Fofana from them, which would simultaneously help Forest and Lyon play in the Europa League next season at the expense of Crystal Palace because of the joint ownership issue. John Textor, who has sold his stake, but ultimately there's still a bit of conflict of interest there, according to UEFA. So, yeah, we'll see what comes of that. But yeah, Lucas Perry is, as Graham says, he's one that is liked and has certainly been watched by people in the recruitment structure. Certainly, they know a lot more about him than we do. So we'll just have to wait and see on that.
What do you want from a goalkeeper, ideally? I mean, he's probably going to face some very high quality shots in the Premier League. So he's going to have to be a very good shot stopper. Going to have to be good at dealing with crosses, because that's kind of a very bare minimum requirement for a goalkeeper these days. But I was wondering, does he need to be able to absolutely ping the ball, onto a sixpence from 50 yards away, when he's got giants all over the park to hit? I mean, you could just put it in the air in the general area of say they get Stack, put it in the general area of an Anton Stack, and he probably wins that ball, because he'll get there and he'll win the header because he's enormous. The ball will be attracted to his field of gravity. But can you sacrifice? Is there an area where you can sacrifice in order to get someone who excels in another, or is a solid, unspectacular all-rounder what it takes in the Premier League?
I think most important is shot stopping ability. Second, because you are going to face more shots. You know, that's just a fact. You can have all these giant defenders as much as you want, but when you have less of the ball, you're going to concede more shots than you're going to take. Well, that's a general rule, isn't it? I think after shot stopping ability, I think you want concentration. Someone who's not going to have a little bit of a wobble, or if they do make a mistake, then they just put it behind them. And I think secondary to those two, I think that's when you could look at the distribution ability. You see it all the time. People are like, okay, what do you want out of your goalkeeper first and foremost? Well, to stop the ball going in the net. That's kind of what they're there for. The rest is, it is secondary, and I'd probably include controlling dominating the box as well, especially given the size of the defenders that Leeds have now in that area. If you're putting crosses in, do you necessarily need a goalkeeper who's going to physically dominate everyone, or would you rather someone who is better at shot stopping and comes to claim high balls less, because you've got Jakub Biol, you've got Sebastian Bornau, you've got Pascal Struijk, Joe Rodon, who are going to be able to head it away and subdue sufficiently put off or subdue the Premier League quality attackers that are going to try and head it in. I'd definitely have shot stopping at the top of my list.
And goal scoring on the list as well, just in case they need a late one. I'd love to see a goalkeeper score for Leeds.
That is one of the things which is very Leeds, because it's never ever dull, that I think has been missing from the folklore of this club. Certainly in the modern era, a goalkeeper scoring a goal would be so typical of this club. But
I mean, happened. It has happened in the past, just not under our watch.
That's what I mean. Yeah, in the contemporary era.
I enjoyed last season. Was it last season or the season before? Last season, I think, when Daniel Farke basically said, without saying it, Illan Meslier is terrible at headers, so don't expect to see him scoring from a corner. Illan Meslier, one that we think should probably go, needs to go really this summer. Max Wober is another who is himself expecting to leave. Leeds are expecting that he will leave, and Werder Bremen are keen on him. They've got a strong interest in him, and something could definitely happen there. Auf Wiedersehen, Pet.
I think it's right for all parties, isn't it? Wober barely played last season due to injuries, and not being there at the start of the season when Leeds began, and maintained a really good defensive record, so he was never going to get in the team. He's not a left back. He's certainly not a left back to replace Junior Firpo's gap in this team. I think they've got stronger left-sided centre backs. So yeah, but if you're listening to this from a Werder Bremen perspective, I think probably stick about 2.5 million to 3 million on top of what you were going to pay, because he's a fantastic left back, very good tackler,
strong in the air,
Austrian international,
takes a good free kick.
And you know what? I think you could definitely get a long throw out of him. But yeah, I think it's right for all parties. It sounds harsh to say, but like, he doesn't want to be here. The Leeds fans really want him playing next season. Not really. So it makes sense for him to go and play in the Bundesliga, where, you know what, I imagine he would probably have a decent enough career. Robin Koch's gone over there and done well. Rasmus Christensen's gone over there and done well. It's a very strange exchange program that they've got going on at Elland Road and with the Bundesliga. It's like you can have the players that we've have come to the end of their shelf life, but we will take all of your tallest, all of your physically dominant players, please.
Bring me your biggest boys.
Yeah.
It's like that Bible story where your man goes and asks the father to see his biggest, strongest sons. He keeps bringing out like one. He's like, no, bring me the next biggest, strongest one. And that's what Leeds are doing with the Bundesliga. No. We don't want a 6'1" central midfielder. Bring us your 6'4" central midfielder.
Yeah, I think if in another life, in another world, if Nick Voltemada hadn't popped off at Stuttgart this season, I think he would have been very high on Leeds'
Oh,
list of targets. But
would
he's
he ever?
unfortunately going to Bayern Munich instead. So
I feel like he's making a mistake there. Why wouldn't you just have another year yet before going to Bayern Munich and being part of the glorious, successful time that they're having? Why not just come and enjoy the mid to lower table Premier League battle for a season? I mean, he could certainly do it, couldn't he? He looks just absolutely sublime, but he is so far beyond the reaches, I think, of Leeds United, and that was probably even well before the Euros. That was identified because of the season
oh
that he's
yeah,
had.
definitely.
But he was so much fun to watch. Um, little elements of what you've talked about that big body, as you like to say it, and getting the ball, around halfway even, and just holding off defenders, running away from defenders, turning them. Yeah, great fun to watch.
Yeah. Someone else great fun to watch, Junior Firpo, but not in an Ellen Road capacity anymore. I think you summed it up quite nicely. He was a 3, moonlighting as a 9 towards the end of his Leeds stint. He was great fun to watch. He was very fun to interview as well. Good talker. Seems like he had really good emotional intelligence. And the message that he's put out to Leeds fans after confirming his exit on a free transfer, I think is really heartfelt as well. So I do think it's the right time for him to part ways, and Leeds are able to evolve that position, evolve the squad. He goes out on a high, and he'll be fondly remembered for those last 2 seasons, and the litany of assists and goals that he contributed with. Yeah, what are your favourite Junior Firpo memories, Graham?
I really enjoyed interviewing him twice last season. We did 2 exclusive sit downs with him, and both times were excellent. Just the fact that with a lot of footballers, you get very, very little actual detail or anecdotes, and he's talking about his granny not realizing he's famous, and walking along the beach with her, and selfie hunters appearing, and her being all surprised. Really enjoyed his kind of candor. But I think for me, the one thing that I really enjoyed, and the best example of it I think I can bring to mind, is Hillsborough last season, where he slid. Was that last season, or was it just the start of this season? It feels like a long time ago, but he slid across. It must have been last season because it was to Bamford. He slid across between the back 4 and the goalkeeper to the back post where Bamford came in and finished it. And it was the angle of that cross that he always got right for me. Like he didn't whip it in so it was curling away from goal, with so much pace that a striker or someone else couldn't get on it. He angled it brilliantly. It's like he was almost passing the ball from a crossing position diagonally towards the back post. He always put it in a great area, and there was quite a few examples of that this season as well. He set up Dan James for a couple of goals. He set up Bogle for a goal, and he scored some great goals himself. The Ruud Gullit header at Bramall Lane was a real highlight. And yeah, it was just we talked last week, didn't we, about putting unlikely people up front. But when he played up front, he actually did it really well. He deals with the ball so brilliantly that he probably could, at a certain level, play as an attacking midfielder. He could certainly play as a winger. But you're right. In football, quite often players miss the moment to say goodbye. They miss the chance to go out on a high, and then things maybe dwindle or go downhill, or as time takes its natural course, or as the level gets harder. But why not go out as a champion? And I know that he will have wanted to stay, but Leeds, I just don't think were willing to give him the same money that he was on when he first arrived from Barcelona, because they were looking at another left back. And given that they're looking at quite an attacking left back, my suspicion is, or my hope would be, that if they're looking for depth at left back, they'll go and get a defender, a kind of a more solid, more stay at the back defender, just to be a bit of a a counteract to if they get Goodmanson to him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, yeah, that would make sense. More defenders, please. That's essentially what we need. Elland Road needs more defenders. The team with the best expected goals conceded in the Championship last season needs more defenders. It's a sad one, but ultimately I think it's the right decision. My favourite junior memories are first time we chatted with him pitch side, and certainly the first time I did, just being dazzled by how white his teeth were. Really, really good set on him. I also loved his registration plate, that every time we'd walk into Elland Road, you'd pass all the players' cars and you're like, I wonder whose that one is. I wonder whose that one is. And then it was, actually, I'm not gonna read it out because it's a private thing, but it essentially spelled out Firpo and his number, which I thought was, yes, I wonder whose car that is. That's a good one. And the colour of one of the cars that he used to turn up at the training ground in, that was quite interesting, particularly when he wasn't, the most popular figure at Leeds. I now look back on that and think, in a very revisionist manner, you know what, fair play, lad. But yeah, that header against Sheffield United, massive, and just all the assists. When he got that hat trick of assists against Cardiff last season, his dance at Accrington Stanley in the FA Cup after he scored there, that was good. What else did we have? The goal that he scored against Southampton, I know it was the season when Leeds got relegated, but that felt like a potential turning point. A really tight game against an opponent who was also down there. He came up with a goal at an important time. And the chant, of course, I think you have to mention the fans' role in Firpo's redemption arc, because we did not expect that to happen for him 2 years ago. Yeah, you've seen Firpo now. Go on, get yourself home. And what was it? What's the other one? He came from Barca. He won a cup in Spain. Come to Leeds, and he'll do the same again. And he did. I think my crowning favourite Firpo moment, on reflection, has to be when he had been injured for a little while or out of favour, and Leeds 21s went to Crewe, I believe it was, in the EFL Trophy, and it went to penalties right at the end of the game. Firpo steps up, he misses his penalty. I remember thinking, there is no way back for this player at this point, because it's just not possible, and yet he proved us all wrong. And yeah, I'm sure there is a certain recently out of work manager who probably didn't enjoy his antics on top of the parade bus by starting a certain chant with the fans either side of the bus. But yeah, I think for most people in Yorkshire, they'll probably see and remember Junior Firpo with very, very fondly for his time at Leeds.
Yeah, you've won the league now off home to Real Betis, and enjoy yourself there, where they also absolutely adore him.
Yeah.
What about Super Joey Rothwell?
Yeah, I think a really good move for him up to Rangers. 2-year deal gives him a little bit more security than just the loan spell. He's clearly wasn't gonna continue at Bournemouth, given the regime change there. I think he could do really well at Rangers. Speaking to someone who covers Rangers, and he was saying, based on the profile that I gave him of Rothwell, he's like, sounds like he's the perfect fit with someone like Nico Raskin behind and Diomande alongside as a fellow number 8. Yeah, I think he's got potential to get bags of assists there from set plays and just progressing the ball. What do you think, Graham, as our resident? Well, I know you're cosplaying as a Uganda fan today, but as our resident Ibrox man, what's your thoughts on Rothwell?
Hat tip to you, because you first heard of this, and then we looked into it and found out some more detail that the clubs were in discussions. They had been in discussions as part of the Max Aarons thing. I think Rothwell's name came up during that, and yeah, yesterday morning when we reported it, it was still at the stage of a deal is being worked out, and then I think later on it was reported by some others that a deal was done or a deal is almost agreed. I just think it's all upsides. I think that Rangers need a player who can help run games. The midfield didn't run games like they could have done last season, certain games, and things were, certain games got away from them or out of the control or were too open, or they'd go up and they'd get pegged back. And you absolutely need to dominate the ball and dominate possession. And he really helped Leeds do that. He keeps himself very busy. He always goes looking for it. Yes, he'll probably be in for some physical punishment, shall we say. But if there is a gap, I would back him to be able to dart into it and find it. He can pick a pass, and his set piece delivery, particularly if Aarons is going to take the place of Tavernier, which feels possible, then you'll want someone very, very good on set pieces. And his delivery made Leeds so much more dangerous when he was on the pitch last season. I feel like 4 assists is almost a discredit to him.
Yeah.
For some of the deliveries we saw him take last season. I feel like Leeds didn't quite take advantage to the fullest of his ability at set pieces. And he came close with a couple of free kicks as well, didn't he? But yeah, for that, if he can do what he did against Sunderland, when he came on and he curls that free kick right onto Struijk's enormous bounce, and he basically played the ball off Struijk's head into the net. But even more the second one, where he gets the ball from Ramazani's incisive shank and sends a man the wrong way, and then just absolutely rockets it. I mean, I still wonder if that ball was going in, whether or not Struijk glanced it. But
well, you reported it as a Rothwell goal, didn't you? In the moment.
Yeah, I did, because I didn't see the touch from the big Indo-Dutchman. So just, 2 great moments. If he can replicate that, he'll be a hero up there. And he now knows what it's like to play for a big team already. So that'll help him too. It just feels like a good move.
Yeah. Do you reckon we'll see a Rothwell howitzer at Ibrox next season?
I would hope so. I would hope that he'll score at least 10 goals and have 20 assists next season.
Right, yeah. I can see that 2-year deal being extended if he does that.
But he does have to have some strength and some legs next to him. I think that's pretty important. But yeah, I went on a Scottish radio channel yesterday, and they were asking, do you think we could see more business like this, kind of almost intimating Leeds-related business? And my response was, well, you've already seen one ex-Leeds transfer target who, was in the building and then walked out of the building, go to Rangers, and now you've seen one of last season's Leeds players go to Rangers. It's not direct Leeds to Rangers business, but it is kind of 49ers adjacent business, isn't it? And it just shows that, I think players that Greta Steinsson was very, very aware of and watched an awful lot of, has thought they can definitely do a job in Scotland for us. So yeah, we'll see if there's any more like that this summer.
Speaking of this summer, then, are you going anywhere nice, Graham? Germany, perhaps?
Well, I'm going to Germany, and there are nice bits of Germany, but where I'm going is pleasant enough, but wouldn't be my first choice. Let's say that. Yes, so we have 4 weeks on this podcast been talking about Leeds United going back to Germany and repeating their training camp that they had last season, the one that we went to that we weren't allowed to talk about until it was over. And Leeds United were absolutely convinced that this summer would be different. That was the noise at the time, was this won't happen next summer. It'll be different. They sought written assurances from the German FA and their tour operator that it would be different. And somehow it is not different, because the German authorities have done what they did last season and said, no, you cannot have a permit for fans to be at games. And it is wildly frustrating for supporters who would be willing and able to travel to these games, and they hate missing Leeds United games. There's fans that just have missed, of the games that fans have been allowed to go to, so discounting the COVID era, some of these fans haven't missed a game for years and years and years, or decades. And I know they're pre-season friendlies, and some people say, well, so what? You can go to Stockholm, you can go to Dublin, you can watch the Villarreal game. It's not really the point. If you're able and willing to go, and we're planning to go, or had even started to make plans or spend money on going. So it's very, very late in the day to hear, no, you will not be permitted to these games. Very frustrating for Leeds because they miss out on revenue. And we did get a response from a police commissioner in Germany from the regional police, saying that the reasons why games might be discounted for permits would include security considerations. My feeling is that the local police were not equipped to deal with the potential influx of Leeds fans and would have had to require national assistance, and that just seems to be a no-no. Now, I haven't personally looked to see who else is playing in Germany this year from across Europe and whether or not their games are going ahead, or whether it's simply a quirk of this particular region that Leeds are going to. But there is now a massive tension between Daniel Farke's wish to stay and play here in the summer and the optics of the whole thing and the supporters being included in the summer festivities, which makes you wonder about next summer and what might happen. But it can't really be allowed to continue a situation like this, as idyllic as it might be as a training base. And you can understand that the facility is fantastic. It's all on site and there's nowhere really for players to go and get in any mischief. You can understand the draw, but come on.
Yeah, it was a big surprise to us, wasn't it? I imagine it was
nasty
a nasty surprise to Leeds. Yeah, it's just a bit rubbish, isn't it? Like, just the pre-season games. I know that in the past there may have been a little bit bother when teams have gone abroad, but ultimately I'd describe that as an anomaly. And yeah, it leaves a sour taste, doesn't it?
You look at, we played Elche, right? We were there for that, and there was no bother. They've gone to Sardinia, as far as I'm aware, no bother. Oslo against Manchester United, didn't see a hint of trouble in and around the game. The atmosphere was pre-season, because that's what it is. Yeah. It's a friendly. Yeah. You'd have to be an absolute melt to go to spend your money on flights and hotels to go and try and get into a scrap in the sunshine. Not expecting any trouble whatsoever in Stockholm this summer, and similarly Dublin, I think, will just be one great big Guinness infused party. So yeah, it's a difficult one to explain, really, beyond what the two different sides are saying. And we did have this suggestion from Germany that there was a game at Rostock that was going to have fans. And Rostock's 4.5 hours, 450k away from where Leeds will be training. So that was never really an idea. Leeds say that they had never any plans to go there. So again, that just adds to this confusion and disgruntlement in the fan base. It's not really a topic that we want to be talking about this time next season.
Yeah, if we considered that the players Leeds don't intend to use in these games, that we could offer them to the German Polizei and just say, look, get them fitted in some uniforms, obviously XL, and let them do some cattle herding of these fans. Sebastian Bornau, Jacobillo. I mean, you probably want to see the new lads playing, but just get Pascal in a.
Well, maybe because they only play 45 minutes each, don't they? So
yeah.
You could have, on one side of the Leeds United supporters, you could have Martin Sykes, and on the other side of the supporters, you could have Anton Stack and Jacobillo. I'd feel safe. I think everyone in the stadium would feel safe. No one would dare meddle on either side. It's just annoying. The whole thing's very annoying, and also it takes away from the game massively. Like those 2 games last season, I'm not going to say like it was like watching paint dry, because it was a useful exercise in seeing what they were going to look like and looking at Bogle and things like that. But it's not a spectacle without supporters. It's a training ground exercise.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think that's just about everything on this week's episode of the Inside Ellen Road podcast. Hope to have heard a bit more news on transfers by the time we speak next week. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But I think the core message is that they're getting on with the business, and they're getting them through the door, which is exciting ahead of what will be an exciting season. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.